Okay, so the website, familiar with content, its content's all the same within the architecture what we have on the website, but you don't have to have any software knowledge to do it unless you don't have an IT support to get it on actually. The databases are available, the documents, the supporting materials. It's going to be available on the IMPO site when we get it done at the end of the project. Right now it's on this local, so you want to go to this local address, this is what we're going to walk through. My main goal here, I'm going to rip through this pretty quick. I just want to make you familiar with all the different things that are available on the website, so you can go back and look at it a little bit later.
But I just want to point out, like Cliff said, it will be on the MPO website. So once this entire ITS update is done, there will always be a current version of the architecture on our website for you to reference.
Okay. So you'll notice that across the top, we got the menu bar for the different aspects of the architecture. We talked a lot about this with stakeholders, inventory services, standards, interfaces, the projects. So we're going to walk through these quickly, but there's a relationship amongst them that I want to point out. So if you look at this under stakeholders, go ahead and click on stakeholders, and you're going to see a list of stakeholders from the architecture. In this case, we just clicked on City of Carmel. I'm picking on Carmel here a lot because they're at the top of the list. It's easy to get to. I'm not trying to be preferential here at all. But it'll give you the inventory list. This is the systems and inventory in the architecture that they're involved with, that they own and operate, the projects that they're involved with. You're going to see more projects on them when you're looking at the website right now because this is an older snapshot or a screen capture. You also notice that the banner is different. It should be looking different. We got the blue banner that matches better with the MPO now. It has a footer for the MPO now too on the pages. And then the roles and responsibilities that are identified for that particular, scroll down. Now, when we talked about this as stakeholders, so when you click on and look at here with the inventory, you're actually going back and look at the same kind of information that's available on the inventory tab. Roles and responsibilities, same thing. And then there's a list of the projects would be over there. So there's just different ways of getting to the same information. It's the main point here with this. And there's some, the architecture in the RAD tool, which we'll go back next, is in Microsoft Access. And that's, we're basically RADed, we'll go through, is just a front end that we put on that to manage the data. It is managed with Access. So we're drawing all this information out of the same place. So the data you get out of the database is the data that you're seeing here. On the inventory tab, again, if you click on, you can click on any ones you want, but on Carmel Engineering Department, I added operations on there just to make it a little bit more definitive as far as the system. But you get a status, you get the description, get the stakeholder that's for that inventory element. You get the understanding of the different systems that are interconnected to. These are other things like field devices, field equipment, architecture flows. So this is where we get into the details of each one of the information flows. And as you click on each one of those, you get more information. And then further down the list, the subsystems of the national architecture. This is where we mapped this particular element is mapped to one or more entities, physical objects in the national ITS architecture. That's how we get reference back, and they're connected. So that's how we're tying it together. When we tie a map, like in this case, the Carmel Engineering Department operations, we tie it to the Traffic Management Center subsystem and the Maintenance and Construction Management Center subsystem. That means they're looking at things for traffic management functions and maintenance functions. Okay, so we inherit all the things from the national architecture are available to us to actually tailor to meet what they actually do. Will they do everything from the national architecture? No, they will not. Nobody does. But because it's a very broad thing we have in the national architecture, but you can tailor it to what you need. So it gives you a larger palette to draw from. In addition, the services are identified at the bottom of the list that inventory element is involved in. And clicking any one of those links will take you to those further definition. involved are parts of the architecture. Then on the services tab, identifying here with you can get if you click on a service, you'll get a service graphic. So in this case, we're looking at commercial vehicle parking. So this is tied into the parking system or project. So the graphic gives us an interconnect diagram. This is just saying these different pieces are physical objects or elements are connected together, but then the corresponding flow diagram. So now those individual interconnects are now blown up into identifying specific information flows. Okay. And you also have the description of the elements there too that you can link to. Under roles and responsibilities, if I click on the which one that is, what is that? Fiber installation roles and responsibilities. They could be any one of them you want, but you get an idea of the service packages that are assigned for that particular roles and responsibilities, the stakeholder, and then the roles and responsibilities in those services. Okay. We equate roles and responsibilities to the operational concept requirement in the federal highway rule, just so you know. Then interfaces, this is a very long list. This is all the interfaces in information flows in the architecture for the region.
How many do you think are in here? Like, there's like 1,000 of them probably.
It's a long list. But if you click on any one of them, it'll give you the description of that information exchange. Now, there's no way of really sorting this on the website, but you can get to the information. You're getting to that much detail, you might as well open up the Radit software and start using it that way. It really is down to it. Now, standards, we talked a lot about standards today. So it's not going to tie on the standards tab, it's not going to tie it to individual flows. You'll get that, we'll talk about that in a second, where you get that individual tie. But it lists all the standards in the architecture that are supporting the flows. You can get down to further information then on each one of these. When you see it, the tab you get to will get you to a communications profile. This gets back to what you were talking about, Morgan, earlier about with profiles. There's communication profiles and data profiles identified. Standards, in this sense, we don't call it necessarily, we call it a standards tab, but it's actually communication solutions. The stack implies multiple standards. So that's what's reflected here for comm and for data. And so all we're doing is really kind of getting you to a point and pointing to the standards you want to go do further investigation on. But these are ones to consider. Right, reference anything that's something else. Exactly. This gets into the weeds very quickly when you start getting into standards. So better be strapped in and ready to go. Comes down to it. But it's a good reference. And then we get to agreements. Agreements in sense of architecture are not the agreements themselves. They're identifying agreements, and you have to go find that agreement as a reference for another place. But when we look at planning, the agreements may not be in place, but looking at the architecture and understand the relationships we need to impose with a particular project or a strategy going forward, we may need to identify an agreement. So we would identify the agreement in the architecture associated with the project or with a particular relationship between two different or more organizations, so we can capture that agreement. It doesn't say that the agreement exists, but we actually status it whether it exists or not. But the need for the agreement is there. That again ties back to Rule 940, saying we need to understand the agreements that need to be put in place. It doesn't say you have to have the agreements, but you need to know what agreements need to be put in place. And then under projects, now we get a lot of good information here on the website, which I think is the thing about the website. I think is you don't have to have that software knowledge, so I don't have to get into the details of the Radit software, but I can get a lot of information very quickly here if I'm looking for something in particular. So in this case, we're looking at Indianapolis signal priority. We get from that project, we get a list of the description, whether it's something that exists now or is planned or ongoing. We get the stakeholders that are engaged in that project based on the inventory elements that are parts of that project. Okay, then we get this list of service packages that are services that are from the architecture that are applied to that particular project. I'm going to point out something here real quick, just while we got this up. There, when you look at the project service package, what we do with the nomenclature in the architecture is when we define a service for a project, in parentheses behind it, we put the project name. That way it associates that particular service, because there will be multiple versions of a transit signal priority in the architecture. We know which this is an instance of that overall service and is maybe tailored differently for that particular project. So we identify that way. We also have all the information flows that are associated with the project architecture. And then if you click on the button in the middle for interconnect flow diagrams, you get the diagrams for the project, interconnect and information flow diagrams. Further down the list is functional requirements. We talked about requirements. Well, this is where we're defining those represented. Each project has functional requirements defined in it per the services that are being provided under that project. So this gets us into the system engineering process. We're still not even there developing the project yet. And then we have the list of standards that are applied to those particular interfaces we've got identified there in the project. And then the operational concept of roles and responsibilities of each organization involved in the project.
Okay, Cliff, one question. So this is a great example of like Indigo and City of Indianapolis, like really coordinating pretty closely. When it comes to ongoing changes, maybe there are different technologies being considered or whatnot. Is that something, how does that get reflected in here? Is that a data point that Matt or Nathan, their teams have to coordinate or work with maybe MPO to make sure that that is being reflected in here?
So talk about if we're going through implementation, something changed.
Correct.
Yeah, we'd want to roll back to MPO with the change form, and we'll talk about that. So the change form will be available to say, okay, I got this project, I need to make this change to the architecture and describe what it is. We decided instead of going with a transitional priority through the field device, through the cabinet, we decided to go back and have the decision made for signal priority back at the center. And so we're changing the project architecture. So now we're adding something different here in the way that flow of information is going. That goes into the change form that gets submitted to IMPO. Now it'll be implemented into the stack for the next maintenance update of the architecture.
Something like this, for example, if in the future Indigo crosses boundaries and goes into a different county, different jurisdiction, and the transit signal priority becomes the whole corridor, can these be, renamed so that we're not creating a new project for like a, regional transit priority, but we can just take one that already exists, rename it. It's not going to break anything, right?
No.
Okay. Just thinking like
how would you handle that in the planning process? Would it be a new project?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking like Indigo going into Carmel. Of course, they won't have signals up there, but just as an example, how we don't need a Indianapolis transit signal priority and then a separate one for the jurisdiction on the other side. I wouldn't think, or maybe we do. I don't know.
All kind of depends on how it's going to actually be implemented. Because I would assume there's another project that's going to be defined with funding that's going to make that new jurisdiction happen. I would define the project separate. There would be a relationship between that project.
So how do projects? Is there a way that projects reference each other then? So like Indianapolis Transit Signal Priority Project, could that link to then the other one in the other jurisdiction?
That was included
in the description. Okay.
And then the last thing is the resources tab. A lot of things available here. There's some of these things are still.
A pointer.
It's very sensitive, that one. Yeah.
Okay, so on the research, we updated, get away. So the update report, it's still a draft out there, but when we finalize everything, it'll have what we did change in the architecture since 2014. And then the Radit database is available. You can download that and use that in the Radit tool, which we're going to do next. And then the architecture report, or the architecture itself, it's basically the document form of the architecture rather than just the website.
Oh no! How did that happen?
There we go. And then, okay, the change request form. We were talking about that before, right? Change request form down here. That'll be what you want to change the architecture and submit your changes for. Then there's architecture. As you scroll down further, architecture tools and training materials. So it gives a link to Archit. It also gives you the training courses I talked about before that you can actually go through. They're online. They're available to you without any charge. And then the access to the tools, Radit and Set it, you can get to the same place. Now, there's also one other thing I want to point out here, this software conversion instructions. Archit is changing periodically. You're really on like a year and a half basis that will be updated. The software, Radit software, actually changes more frequently to find issues we need to address, new functionality we want to provide that's independent of the architecture definition, but it's new functionality, new software download. Well, each time we update the software, whether it's Archit change or the software, it'll ask you whether you want to convert. If you're trying to open up a database that's like we're based on 9.2 right now of Archit and Radit. If we come up with a 9.21 of Radit, it'll say you try to open up the new software, the old database with new software, and say you want to convert the database. You're not changing anything necessarily. You're just converting for the new schema from the database standpoint. There's instructions here when that happens. It'll tell you what you should do. You get the option of either opening the database without converting or converting. If you open it, you can't save anything. You can't change anything. You can explore it. That's fine. But that's all you're looking to do. But when you convert it, you just convert it. Now you're going to work with your own copy. Okay, and then it comes down. So it's important to know that that's there. And then we archive different presentations given and whatnot, and of course the update on this resource. Okay, any questions? But I'm going to jump over to Radit, since this is where I really wanted to get to.